Hi folks, HR Funk here. Back in front of the camera with my Gimmick Rival Dark Side pistol. And if you saw my initial review with the Gimmick Dark Side, you know that it has something different about its appearance currently, and that is a new micro red dot optic. Specifically, this is a Vortex Viper optic that's now attached to the slide. And when I got this a couple of weeks ago from my friends at Optics Planet, I wanted to install it on the Rival Dark Side and do a comparison of my shooting between shooting it with the iron sights, as I did in my initial review, and now shooting it with the optics. Specifically, I want to look at the performance with the optic attached and see if I'm shooting better with the optic, if I'm not shooting quite as well with the optic, or if I'm shooting about the same with the optic. And the reason I'm doing this is because I've watched the evolution of handgun optics over the last couple of decades, and they've gone from being more or less a novelty to being something that now we're routinely seeing defensive firearms coming to market that are specifically manufactured to accept a micro red dot optic. Now, a couple of things about the Vortex Viper. First off, this is the first micro red dot optic that I've had that has just the simple dot. There is no circle dot or anything like I have in some of my other optics, and there's definitely no Delta style reticle like I have in my Loophole Delta Point Pro. So this is the first time I've used an optic quite like this, but I have done some shooting with my other optic equipped handguns, and I've gotten to the point where I'm reasonably comfortable with them, and I really wanted to see now if, when installing the new optic on the Rival Dark Side, if I was able to shoot up to the level that I do with iron sights, or maybe even if I was going to be able to shoot a little bit better. Before I get into the actual shooting results, I want to talk a little bit more. I'm going to actually do a mini review of the Vortex Viper optic. There are some things about this optic that I like and some things that I don't like quite so much. Now, as far as the mounting goes, it was pretty straightforward. If you saw my review of the Rival Dark Side, you may recall that it comes with several mounting plates to accommodate a variety of different optics. So the only thing that was required to mount the sight to my pistol was to simply remove the original plate that had the rear sight attached to it, replace it with the proper sight for the Vortex Viper, and then mount the sight. The sight itself is the type that has the battery that is installed on the bottom, and this is the first optic like this that I've had, and I've got to say I really don't like that. In order to change this battery, you have to completely dismount the sight, remove the battery from the bottom, replace it with a new one, and then remount the sight. And I suspect that's also going to cause at least a little bit of a shift in zero. So I'm not a big fan of the way the battery is mounted or installed in this particular sight. But due to that, it does allow the sight to be mounted very low to the slide. In order to do it differently and have the slide out tray, I'm sure that the sight body would have to be elevated somewhat, causing a greater offset between the sight and the center line of the bore. The Vortex Viper has 10 illumination settings, and it was very easy to see. Even though I was out shooting today in bright sunlight, I didn't have any difficulty picking up that reticle. So as far as the brightness goes, that's very good. Also, because of its very diminutive size, it adds little in the way of weight or bulk to the pistol, which is another thing that I like about it. Another thing that became apparent about the Vortex Viper has to do with the elevation and windage adjustment. Now, the windage adjustment wasn't bad. The elevation adjustment, on the other hand, was a little bit of a bear. First off, they both have locking screws right here, and when you tighten these screws down, it prevents the elevation or windage from shifting while you're using the sight. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but what I ran into was an issue with the elevation where it was very, very difficult to turn that screw. In fact, I had a mini screwdriver with me cranking on that thing, and it was all I could do to get it to move. When I started to adjust the sight, and this was true with both the windage and the elevation, each increment that you see on the windage and elevation adjustment is supposed to be 1 minute of angle. What I found out is turning these screws moves your point of impact much farther than 1 minute of angle for each increment. So it led to a situation when I was zeroing the sight where I was doing it essentially by trial and error. I would adjust it fire a shot, see where that shot hit, go back, make it another adjustment, and it ended up taking a little bit more time. I still had it zeroed at 25 yards in about a dozen shots or so, but that's more than I would have expected it to take if these were actually accurately marked increments on the windage and elevation adjustment screws. The Viper has a 14-hour auto shutdown feature, and I assume that's from the last time the sight senses any increments or decreases in illumination, but there's nothing in the literature that came with the sight to explain that for sure, so I'm just guessing there. The sight also comes with a cover to protect it when it's not in use, but according to the manual, that does not turn the sight off when you install the cover. You still have to either physically turn it off by pushing and holding the down button until the sight goes off, or you have to wait for that 14 hours to tick by and the sight to power down by itself. So typically when I use this, I'm going to push the up button once to turn the sight on, and I'm not sure if I can get that on camera here. I'll see if I can get it. And okay, there's the sight. And of course, it looks better in real life than it does on camera. But push it once and use either the up button or down button to adjust the illumination. And then push and hold the down button to turn the sight off. Now, as I said, this is the 6 MOA version of the Vortex Viper. And according to the box, it has fully multi-coated optics. It has the ArmorTech coating on the lens to protect it against dirt and scratches and such. It is shockproof and it is waterproof, and it is also covered by the Vortex unconditional lifetime warranty. So that's my mini review of the Vortex Viper optic. So once the Viper was mounted on my rival dark side, the next order of business was to zero the sight. So when I arrived out at the range today, the first thing I did was set up at a distance of 25 yards and firing from sandbags. And as I said, I did have some issues with particularly the elevation adjustment screw, but also the windage screw and the over adjustment that I was getting when I was trying to zero it. But ultimately I did succeed in zeroing the pistol. And this target is my last 3 shots from 25 yards. And at that point, I was pretty happy to call that zeroed, and you can see there are shots all over the place as I was trying to dial that in closer and closer to the center. But I finally did get a good zero. From 25 yards, that looks to be about 1.25 inches center to center, something like that. So I'm pretty happy with that zero. Then I moved on to some of the shooting drills, and what I decided to do was shoot some of the same drills with the rival dark side that I had shot previously in my review. And that time around, of course, I was shooting with the iron sights, and I wanted to shoot it with the Viper installed this time and see what kind of differences I would see, if any. So after the zeroing was complete, my next step was to fire a 10-shot slow fire accuracy drill from a distance of 7 yards, just like I did with the iron sights, and here's how that went. So a couple of things with that initial accuracy test. Now, one thing I neglected to mention before I went into that segment is the fact that prior to shooting that test, I did walk up and fire a shot from 7 yards, then I backed up and fired a shot from 10 yards, and then I backed up and fired a shot from 50 feet because I knew since I zeroed at a distance of 25 yards because of my mechanical offset, I was going to be hitting low at those closer distances. So the top target here shows my first shot from 7 yards right here, and I can see there it's about an inch low, maybe not quite. I backed up a little bit farther to 10 yards and fired this shot. It almost went through the same hole, but you can see it's just slightly higher because I'm getting slowly back to that distance of 25 yards. Then I went back to 50 feet and I fired this shot, and you can see initially from 7 yards I'm about an inch low. Here, when I go back to 50 feet, I'm about 3/4 of an inch low, and I did pull my first shot off to the left, but you can see elevation-wise, both of those shots are right at that 3/4 of an inch low. So I had an idea of where to hold when I was firing that accuracy test. So when I was firing my 7-yard accuracy test, I was not aiming at the center of the bullseye here. I was actually aiming right where this line terminates at the top of that white circle. And you can see I could have probably held just a little bit higher. I could have probably held right about where those two lines intersect, and the group would have been even more well centered. Now this group is not quite as accurate as I shot with the same pistol using iron sights, and I'll superimpose a photograph of the target I shot that day on here. In fact, if you saw that video, I did that twice, and both times I had 8 out of 10 shots that made one big hole. I think one time it was about 3/4 of an inch center to center. The other time it was something like 5/8 of an inch center to center. And then I had 2 flyers each time. This time around, I really only had 1 flyer, but the group is not as good. And what I notice, and I've noticed this before with red dot sights, is when I'm holding on target, the dot itself really magnifies any movement. So you see it sort of dancing around on your target, and I find that to be distracting when I am trying to get my sight picture and squeeze off accurate shots. With iron sights, the exact same amount of movement is still there. It's just not as visible as it is with the red dot sight. And as I work toward transitioning more and more toward the use of red dots, that's something I'm just very aware of that I've got to get past. And when I move into the defensive drills where I'm just coming up, picking up the sight and squeezing off the shot, I don't notice that movement nearly as much as when I'm trying to fire those really slow, steady, accurate shots. Now, all that said, the accuracy on that test looked pretty good. I mean, I really can't complain a lot about the accuracy that I was getting. I did pull that one shot a little bit low and off to the left there, but otherwise that's a pretty well-centered group. And it seems like when I'm using an optic on a pistol, if I'm taking my time, I can keep accuracy pretty close to what I'm getting with iron sights. But again, because of that movement that I'm seeing in the sight, I don't get quite the exact same level of accuracy that I do, at least with this pistol, as when I was shooting it with those iron sights. So now it was time to move on to some defensive drills with the rival dark side and the Vortex Viper. And this time around, while I was still at 7 yards, I fired 3 consecutive failure drills. Now again, I did this same exact drill with the iron sights when they were attached to the rival dark side. And here's how the failure drills went. So for me, those were 3 pretty horrible failure drills. If you saw my initial review of the rival dark side when I shot those drills, it was uncanny how accurate I was shooting with the iron sights on that drill. I had no problem keeping the headshots on the headshot, the body shots centered in the body, and in fact I had bullets going through the same hole on more than one occasion. So for me to turn around with the exact same pistol on a different day with this optic installed and shoot what I think were really poor failure drills indicates, for me at least, I am still much more comfortable and much more accomplished when using iron sights. Now, one of the things that I was doing while I was firing that failure drill, or that group of failure drills, is I was trying to shoot at the same tempo that I would shoot that drill with iron sights, and it just wasn't working. So when I moved into the next drill, which was my multiple adversary drill, where I fire at 2 different targets, 1 shot at the target on the right, 3 shots to target on the left, and then 2 more shots to target on the right in rapid succession, I decided to slow down just a little bit and fire this while I could actually watch my red dot and make sure that I was keeping shots on target. And here's how that went. So as you saw, the multiple adversary drill looked a lot better. All the shots stayed on the body of the target, on both targets. The shots on the target on my right were a little low in the body, but at least they were grouped pretty closely together. The shots that were on the target on my left were all pretty much right around the heart and lung area, so I wasn't feeling too bad about that. And again, I'll superimpose a photo of the last time that I performed this drill with the iron sights on the rival dark side. Again, the accuracy was not as good this time around with that drill that you just saw, but it was not as bad as when I shot the failure drill right before that. So based on this, I decided to go back to a distance of 7 yards again and once more try that failure drill, this time slowing down just a little bit and watching for that dot and trying to see if that drill would go a little bit better. So here's how the second failure drill looked. So I hope you'll agree the second time through on those 3 failure drills looked a lot better than the first time through. And the biggest difference was just slowing down a little bit, giving myself a chance to find that dot and squeeze off good shots. I still fire it better with the iron sights than I do with the optic, but at least that time around I didn't feel like I embarrassed myself, which I pretty much did the first time through. Something else you might have noticed when I was shooting the first failure drill, the second shot to the body, there was a hesitation between the first shot and the second shot. The reason for that was because after I fired the first shot, I lost the dot. And if you watch closely, the camera that's aimed at me, you're probably going to see me between those shots moving the pistol a little bit, trying to find that dot again so I can get it back on target. And that's one of the things with a red dot optic that you'll encounter depending upon the reticle. Now, as I said before, the Vortex Viper has a single 6 MOA dot. And the more I use it, the more I really prefer my Hilux TD3C and my Holosun 507, both of which have a circle dot reticle, because the larger circle around the dot gives you more to find, and usually you can see at least some portion of that larger circle somewhere in the lens and get the dot back on target quicker than when there is just nothing in your lens at all with this single dot and you have to move it around and try to find that thing. So you don't have that obviously with iron sights where the whole way up on target, and as you're shooting you can see that front sight, you can see the rear sight, and all you have to do is bring the front sight back down into the rear sight and then squeeze off your next shot. So these are all issues that I'm bringing up as we examine this topic of the pistol optic as it's compared to the iron sights on not only this pistol but all other pistols as well. So at the end of that round of drills, this is what my targets looked like. And while I take some comfort in the fact that my shooting seemed to improve as I worked my way through these drills and shot more and more, I can still state unequivocally that these targets do not reflect nearly the level of accuracy as when I shot the same drills with only the iron sights attached to my rival dark side. So even though I'm shooting better and better with the Vortex Viper as I go, I'm just still not shooting as quickly and as accurately as I do with the same pistol when it has the iron sights installed. So next I wanted to do a little bit of shooting from some extended distances. So I put a different target on the target board and I backed off first to a distance of 50 feet and fired a 5-shot group at what I would call a medium shot tempo. Then I moved back to a distance of 25 yards and again fired another 5-shot group at a slightly slower shot tempo. Now unfortunately, prior to starting to shoot these groups, my target camera suffered a heat stroke. It was 90 something degrees out on the range today, and with the sun shining directly on it, it was more than my camera could take. So you're only going to be able to see me shooting, and the only reason I've got this footage in here is to show you the tempo at which I was shooting. Then when I come back, I'll show you the target and where those shots landed. So here's my group from 50 feet, and all in all, I'm pretty happy with that. You saw that I was shooting, as I said, at a medium shot tempo. I wasn't rushing, but I wasn't taking all day to fire off those shots. And those all went into a group of about 2.5, maybe 3 inches. So, like I said, I'm pretty happy with that. That's actually about the way I shot it with the iron sights. This might actually be a little bit better as I think about it. Again, I'll superimpose a photo of the 50-foot shooting from when I had the iron sights attached to the pistol. And you'll see that this group is actually a little bit better. So this is the first time I think that I shot a group and had a better result with the optic than I had with the iron sights. And there's the 25-yard group. And again, I'm very happy with that group from 25 yards. That one is also better than the group that I got with just the iron sights. So it is possible to shoot more accurately with an optic, even for me, than I do with the iron sights. But the difference comes in when I'm trying to do it quickly. So let's talk about, at the end of the day, what I've learned from this exercise. Sometimes exercises such as this teach us things about our equipment. Sometimes exercises like this teach us things about ourselves. And I think today's exercise for me was a little bit of both. First off, I'm someone who was initially trained in using handguns with iron sights all the way back when I was in the Marine Corps. And I still am very much accustomed to coming up and picking up that front sight, keeping it in that square rear sight notch and squeezing off good accurate shots. And I still do that better with iron sights than I do with any kind of a pistol optic. Now you might be asking yourself, well, why, if that's the case, are you even messing around with optics? The reason is because the front sight with my eyes the way they are currently is starting to get fuzzy. In fact, it's beyond starting to, it has gotten fuzzy. So with unaided vision, I cannot fire as accurately as I could previously when my eyes are younger. Now, if I wear reading glasses, and if you watch in a lot of my videos, you'll see me wearing reading glasses when I'm performing particularly very accurate shooting. That sharpens up that front sight, and I'm able to achieve the same level of accuracy that I got previously when I was younger. But the only time I wear reading glasses is A, when I'm reading, or B, when I'm shooting a pistol with iron sights and trying to fire very accurate shots. I don't walk around during my daily life wearing reading glasses. So if I would be in a situation where I would have to shoot and I wanted to fire an accurate shot, I would have to be capable of doing that with unaided vision. That's why I've been looking at pistol optics for some period of time now, and why I've been trying so hard to improve my shooting with them. Now on the equipment side of the equation, one of the things that I learned from this exercise today is the Vortex Viper might not be the best optic for me. As I said, I don't really care for that single dot. I prefer the circle dot that I have in some of my other optics because it's easier for me to find that dot. And when I come up, it's harder for me to not have something somewhere in the lens that I can see quickly and align the dot to be able to fire off a shot. I also am not a big fan of the battery configuration. As I said, there are some issues with the windage and elevation adjustments. And just all in all, I don't really care for the Vortex Viper. As I said, I have other options that I just prefer to this one. And I think I might do a little bit of swapping and try some of the other optics on the Canik Rival and see if that works a little bit better for me. Now, also an equipment related note is the Rival Dark Side itself, which continues to function flawlessly. It continues to demonstrate very, very good accuracy. As you saw, whenever I was firing it slowly and taking my time, whether it was those last 3 shots from when I zeroed it, or when I was doing the 10-shot group, or anything like that, even the extended distance shooting, this pistol is capable of very, very good accuracy. It continues to be so, and it just continues to impress me. So I guess the thought that I'll leave you with is don't look at a micro red dot optic as a magic bullet or a magic pill. It is not something that's instantly going to allow you to shoot extremely fast and extremely accurately no matter what else you do. It's not going to make up for poor marksmanship fundamentals or anything else. It is just another tool or another part of your firearm system that may help you, or you might find yourself like me in the boat where you still shoot better with the iron sights than you do with any kind of an optic on a handgun. And that's the video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, as always, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, if you purchase anything from Optics Planet, be sure to use my discount code, which is... And if you use that discount code, it's good for 5% off anything you purchase from Optics Planet. Also remember the discount code from House of Pain Munitions. If you go to House of Pain and order anything from them and use my discount code there, which is HRFUNK10, that'll save you 10% off your purchase from House of Pain. See you next time, folks. And until then, good shooting. Bye-bye.